Good morning, everyone. It is a good morning, isn't it? And I especially like to see the kids who've come in for our craft Sunday. Yay! It's going to be a good Sunday. So welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Lower Bucks. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Karen Marcus, and I'm your lay leader today. I think I'm noticing a pattern this church year. Sherry kind of schedules me into the last Sunday of the month. Have you noticed that? So I don't know, in baseball, who are my baseball fans out there who are watching the, yeah, okay. So what is the guy who comes up to kind of clean up, hit that grand slam, bring all those runners home? Anyway, maybe that's the role I play every Sunday morning. But thank you for being here. We know you have a choice on Sunday mornings. Sometimes it's maybe a choice to stay in bed. But I'm glad you got up, got out on this glorious fall day in the sunshine, and chose to be with us. I found this community several years ago, and what I found to be special and true about it is that it is a community that's built on love, connection, and most importantly, acceptance of all. So that we're happy that you're here to be part of that, and I hope that you choose to become part of this community with us. And today, through our song and spoken word, we hope to strengthen your personal and spiritual journey. So let's take time to relax and enjoy this sacred hour together. For those of you who've seen me up here before, I'm a big fan of a theme. I think these themes that we have every church month are really great at holding us together on what we're focused on. And this month it's been deep listening, a very important skill that we all should actually learn to develop because it's the foundation of good communication. And Unitarian Universalism as a lived faith inspires us to act, live, and love our values out into the world. And this value of deep listening involves hearing more than the words of the speaker. It taps into a deeper meaning, plus some of the unspoken needs and feelings. It's something that's done with the heart as well as the mind and begins with accurately perceiving what others are saying without injecting our own thoughts, feelings, and opinions. And we know that's often very hard. I know for me it's a thing where my mind races as I try to say, well, what am I going to say into response of what they're saying? So it's a real value of our faith that we choose to press pause and really choose to listen to that other person, because that's the foundation of our connection to them. So we're really pleased to have as our guest speaker today, Reverend Andrew Weber. Andrew was with us last church year for the first time, and he was a big hit, so we've invited him back. And we're really pleased that he's going to join us a few times this church year. But because he's new to us, let's do a little bit of introduction. He's a lifelong Unitarian Universalist. He grew up on the main line and currently serves the Thomas Paine Unitarian Universalist Fellowship near Collegeville. He lives in Newark, Delaware, though, so he's got quite the commute with his wife and 2 children. His ministry is one of helping people and communities live into their best selves. And he reflects on the living a faith-informed life in an online blog that we talked about a little bit last time he was here. And I love the title of this. It's How to Drive Like a Minister. Very entertaining, I'm sure, and very informative. I have to confess, I haven't looked at the blog, but I hope that all of us will take a moment to look it up and see what he has to share. I'm sure there are pearls of wisdom there. His sermon title today is Reveres the Past. He references hymn number 145 in our hymnal, and it's titled as Tranquil Streams. And for those of you as you were coming in, Avi was actually playing a bit of the hymn in the background, and because it's unfamiliar, he'll be playing it for us a bit later, so you'll hear more of that. But it's based on stating that our religion has a freedom that reveres the past, but trusts the dawning future more. So what does it mean to honor our past while trusting our future? Maybe it means listening to and learning from past errors and correcting mistakes. So it's no mistake that Andrew references October 14th, which was Indigenous Peoples Day, as a holiday which in many places has supplanted Columbus Day. So he invites us to explore our institutional and personal pasts with both reverence and critique. And so to begin our service and get us all in the mood, I invite our musician Avi Wisnia up to the lectern for our prelude.
Thank you, Karen. Good morning, everyone. So I'd like to start today with a song that really sets the mood for us talking about this theme today. And it is a song by that was actually recommended and suggested a few years ago by someone in this congregation. And it's a very powerful song. And it is a song by the great singer-songwriter Tracy Chapman. And no, it's not that song, her most famous song, although that would be good. But for today's theme, I'm going to play a song of Tracy Chapman's called America. And if you would like to sing along, as I often encourage, although this one is not quite a sing-along, the chorus has a refrain that just repeats the words America in a very beautiful and also contemplative way. So feel free to sing along when we get to the words America. You were lost and got lucky, came upon the shore, found you were conquering America. You spoke of peace, but waged a war while you were conquering America. There was land to take and people to kill while you were conquering America. You served yourself, did God's will, while you were conquering America. The ghost of Columbus haunts this world, 'cause you're still conquering America. The meek won't survive or inherit the earth, 'cause you're still conquering America. Found bodies to serve, submit and degrade, while you were conquering America. Made us soldiers and junkies, prisoners and slaves, while you were conquering America. America, America, America. I see your eyes seek a distant shore, while you were conquering America. Taking rockets to the moon, trying to find a new world, but you're still conquering America. America, 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 America. America, 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 and you're still conquering America.
Thank you, Avi. That really did kind of set the thing. Thank you. So now I'd like to invite Sherry Christenberry up to join me here as we light the chalice and have our opening words. Here, today, in this place, and with these people, may we listen so that we can hear. May we hear so that we can feel. May we feel so that we can know. And may we know so that we can change ourselves and this world. May this chalice we light our way. Thank you, Cheryl. And now I invite Reverend Andrew Weber to introduce our message for all ages.
Thanks, Karen. Well, you already know, we've been talking about it already. Who had a day off of school or work last Monday? Yeah, some people. Did you have school? Did you have school? Do you know? It was a while ago. It was almost 2 weeks ago now. My kids didn't have off. Or who didn't get mail? I mean, you all didn't get mail. Who was surprised by why didn't I get mail? What day is today? It was one of our 11, there are 11 federal holidays. And which one was it? You just shouted out. Which one was it? Columbus Day. Yes, it's Columbus Day. Now, the second Monday in October is a federal holiday, Columbus Day. Now, it's been recently replaced in many places by Indigenous Peoples Day. And I actually went to a few libraries. I brought some of the books along with me. They're sort of, maybe I'll put them up here so you can see them. I'll put them up as the video's playing. But when I went to the libraries, the books were less than helpful, I found. But I did find an intro, and Karen found this intro, actually, a very good introductory video to talk about Columbus Day, to talk about Indigenous Peoples Day. So without further ado, here's a little video, and I'll get some books to just put out.
Hey there, little justice leaders. Today we're going to talk about a very important holiday, Indigenous Peoples Day. Let's discover why we celebrate it and why it's so significant. Meet Kai and Mika. They're going to help us understand why we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. Indigenous means the first people in a place. There are many different indigenous groups, each with its own unique traditions, languages, and histories. Some people celebrate Columbus Day in honor of Christopher Columbus, who sailed across the ocean. But as we learn more about history, we'll learn that the story of Christopher Columbus isn't exactly true. You may have heard people say that Columbus discovered America, but that isn't true. When Columbus arrived, indigenous peoples had already been living there for thousands of years. Not only that, he didn't even make contact with what is now the United States. His ship landed in the Caribbean. You may have also heard that Columbus is a hero. In reality, Columbus and his crew brought a lot of harm to the indigenous people he came in contact with. They stole land, forced indigenous people to work without pay, and even hurt them. Since Christopher Columbus didn't discover America, and he was harmful to the people who lived there when he arrived, many people don't celebrate Columbus Day anymore. Instead, they celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. Indigenous Peoples Day honors the cultures, traditions, and heritage of the native people who were there long before Columbus arrived. Indigenous Peoples Day is a day to honor the wisdom of indigenous elders, the beauty of their art, and the importance of living in harmony with nature. Many indigenous cultures teach us the importance of taking care of our planet. Even though indigenous people have faced many challenges, they have not given up on their traditions and cultures. They continue to pass down their stories, songs, dances, and languages from generation to generation. Today, we can still see the vibrant and diverse cultures of indigenous people all across North America. So, little justice leaders, now you know why we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. It's a time to come together, learn, to celebrate the beautiful tapestry of cultures that make our world so incredible. Thanks for learning with us today. For more lessons about diversity and justice, subscribe to our channel.
So now we know about Indigenous Peoples Day. Harder to say than Columbus, but, still a very important observation for us to sit back and look at. So as the children move out to their craft time, let us sing Go Now in Peace.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the love of us surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
Okay, typically at this point in our service, there would be a reading by our guest speaker. And so for those of you who are into the rhythm of what we do each and every Sunday, we're flipping the script. And we're going to do something a little bit different. Reverend Andrew is going to incorporate the reading as part of his sermon message. So let us move on then to the next thing, and that is our shared plate offertory. So I'll give you just a minute to open those wallets so that we can get the baskets ready and pass those around. But I'll remind you that for the month of September and October, we've been supporting the World Central Kitchen with our shared plate. And I love this idea that the We Care Committee came up with of trying to sort of spend a little more time supporting a very worthwhile endeavor. And we know World Central Kitchen does great work all across the world in places where food is actually needed. So we appreciate your generosity to date. If you saw in the newsletter that came out from our president, it was quite a substantial number that came in. I don't know, Nancy, do you remember? Finance. Anyway, somebody knows the number, but almost $1,000 that's going from this fellowship into those coffers. So thank you for that generosity. Here's your last opportunity. This is the last Sunday that your shared plate is going there. Thank you again for your generosity. I also want to commend the We Care Committee for the endeavors of trying to revitalize our local food donations to the Bristol Food Bank. So we've been gathering food and bringing it on the last Sunday of the month. I'll just remind you of that. This was the last Sunday of the month, but perhaps you noticed as you came in all of the food that has been collected. So again, thank you for your generosity. So let us take a moment to pause. We mentioned this hymn at the beginning of the service, but Avi's going to tell us a little bit more for our musical interlude.
This comes to us from our hymnal number 145, and as it being incorporated into the service, it's not one of the ones that we typically sing. If you do know it, please feel free to sing along with me, or if you're following at home on Zoom and you have a hymnal, it's number 145. Otherwise, please take this time to just sit back and listen as we prepare for today's sermon and talk. Number 145 as Tranquil Streams. As tranquil streams that meet and merge to flow as one to seek the sea, our kindred hearts and minds unite to build a church that shall be free, free from the bonds that bind the mind to narrow thought and lifeless greed, free from a social code that falls to serve the cause of human need, a freedom that reveres the past but trusts the dawning future more, and bids the soul in search of truth adventure boldly and explore. Prophetic church, the future waits for liberating ministry. Go forward in the power of love, proclaim the truth that makes us free.
Thank you, Avi. That was a new one for me. Anyway, really, really good. So let us welcome back Reverend Andrew Weber. He's going to be incorporating both his reading and his sermon message in one go.
That's what happens when you invite guest speakers. They switch stuff up. You're like, oh, but this isn't how we. You invited me. This is how we're doing it today. That's right. That's how we do it now. I found it very interesting to learn about culture through libraries, and I don't mean going to a library and researching society, but looking at what's available, and especially for children. That's why I put these books up here. They're not instrumental to see them. It's just some children's books on Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day. But it's really telling what you can find when you look through children's section and you look for the holiday section. You find Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day, because you can see what's included, what history may be glossed over or maybe ignored completely. I'm going to give you a brief overview of what I found out about Columbus, and especially what I found out about the people he met on his voyages in these children's books, which I decided not to share this morning. The stories are all similar. They have similarities. In each case, we're told that Columbus named the people he met Indians because he thought he had reached the Indies. Okay, and it's usually portrayed as a sort of humorous way, noting that Columbus made a mistake in his geography. Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. And nowhere does it go into the appalling dehumanization, the appalling arrogance of this era, the dehumanization of ignoring an individual's worthiness and personhood, and the arrogance of labeling many groups by his limited understanding, and not by their own identity, right? Now, depending on the publication date and the grade level, some of the picture books say that Columbus was cruel. Some mention that the Europeans and the natives fought, and then there are others which just have, oh, they were so friendly, and they, were happy and brought them plants. And, Now, I went to 3 libraries. Delaware is small. I could do this. I could go to a couple different libraries. And I only found one book on Indigenous Peoples Day. There was only one out of all of those libraries. And it was sorely disappointing. Now, it is written for a much younger audience, and afterwards you can come check them out. That's fine. Look at them. It's much younger audience, but there's no reference at all to the holiday that Indigenous Peoples Day is supplanting. And the only mention of injustice is, quote, "Let us remember the past. Let us work for better days to come." Which isn't bad. It's just not saying any of the whole story. And so what I see is that even though the discussion about Columbus Day versus Indigenous Peoples Day began, does anyone know when people started to say, hey, let's change this, let's shift? 1977. Earlier than I thought. There's still a long way to go. There's still a long way to go. And I'm not going to promote replacing or dismissing Columbus Day. That's not what I'm here. Rather, I think viewing history, deep listening, right? That's our theme. Deep listening of history must be both reverence and critical. Whether from my school, I can only talk from my experience, my school, my parents, my culture, my peers. I grew up knowing that Columbus found our country in 1492, right? He discovered it. He had a great time with the Indians. And then sometime later, pilgrims arrived and they had a big feast. I know more, but that's the gist of what I learned. That was the gist of it. I knew very little about the people native to this land, nor did I understand the atrocities which happened both on purpose and inadvertently. Now, the problem with how we commemorate the holiday can be seen in this well-known adage that history is written by the victors. Right? Have you heard that? Who gets to say what happened in 1492? Well, not the people who were killed. They're not around, right? An overarching concern is that all of our histories, right? This isn't just Columbus Day. All of our histories, all of our stories, if all of our facts are written by the, quote, victors, then we're only getting one side of any story, of any history. The National Museum, and this is where I go back and forth. I have a couple readings, but you hear my voice, and then I'll quote and go back and forth. The National Museum of the American Indian, is a Smithsonian museum, has a website about, quote, unlearning Columbus Day myths, which is some really good information. Listen to what they have to say about this day. Many students learn the phrase, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. But Columbus was not the first foreign explorer to land in the Americas. Neither he nor those who came before him discovered America, because indigenous peoples have populated the Western Hemisphere for tens of thousands of years. European contact resulted in devastating loss of life, disruption of tradition, enormous loss of lands for indigenous peoples in America. It's estimated that in the 130 years following first contact, Native America lost 95% of its population. They go on. Indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere immediately experienced enslavement, theft of resources by the explorers turned settlers. Colonies created by the Portuguese, Spanish, French, Dutch, and English grew throughout the Americas and increasingly encroached upon native lives and lands. Warfare, enslavement, forced relocation disrupted and altered the lives of indigenous peoples in the Americas. Celebrating Columbus and other explorers like him dismisses the devastating losses experienced by indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere in the past and the ongoing effects of colonialism today. They say indigenous peoples are still here. Contemporary Native Americans have led numerous movements to advocate for their own rights. Native people continue to fight to maintain the integrity, the viability of indigenous societies. And American Indian history is one of cultural persistence, creative adaptation, renewal, resilience. Native peoples, students, and allies are responsible for official celebrations of Indigenous Peoples Day in many states across the country. Indigenous Peoples Day is celebrated on the second Monday of October and recognizes the resilience and diversity of indigenous peoples in the United States. Now, I recognize that there's a strange piece of this historical puzzle. There's a strange piece that any discussion about re-examining history can get political and emotional, right? People have very strong feelings about what they know to be true, and tempers rise when change is on the horizon, right? There are people who want to tear down statues and rename schools so our country gives less clout to these people who committed atrocities in our past. Now, balance this with people who push against the, quote, woke culture and don't want their history or their values to be erased by liberalism. One group wants to get rid of a statue of the slave owner, Thomas Jefferson, while another group saying getting rid of that statue is horribly offensive. The Confederate flag continues to be a symbol which to some means oppression, violence, and to others may mean family values and gatherings and Southern pride. I'm just noting these differences. I don't think it makes any sense to create more divisions. But I do think it's necessary to look at our history with reverence and with critique. And actually, I want to bring it a little bit closer. So we're going to look at our history. That's our faith history a little bit. Let's bring the conversation closer now. The hymn that we heard, 145, as Tranquil Streams, was written in 1933. And it was written before the consolidation of Unitarianism and Universalism, which happened in 1961. And I'm giving you a little bit of faith history. Some of you may know, this may be a review or it may be new, that in 1961, two religious organizations came together to create something new, grounded in two histories, looking together toward a shared future. And this vision is written to in the lyrics of this hymn. If you have a chance later to look it up, 145 is Tranquil Streams, they say, this is the two faiths coming together. Two streams meet and merge to create a better future together, right? How has that shaped up? I mean, how is our faith now? Well, there are still divisions in Unitarian Universalism, albeit maybe not along the same lines as what first happened at that consolidation. Just as with our country, however, when history is written, the quote, victorious write it, and so what is ignored? Who here has an idea of Unitarian Universalists' history with racial justice? I have some. If not direct knowledge, maybe you have an idea of what we've been doing. I grew up in this faith at Mainline Unitarian Church. And I should know, right? I learned that our faith has been at the forefront of racial justice. Leaders in the civil rights movement always pushing for more equality, a goal of complete justice and liberation, right? I mean, does that sound like what you, like, yeah. If you know me, like, I'm leading you along a path to, like, he's like, hold on, he's going to do something. Yes, I am. I'm going to trick, well, it's not entirely, because think about when our religion came together, when this went through a big change, 1961. What else was happening in the country in the early 1960s? The civil rights movement, right? The civil rights movement. So here we are, this faith which is just joined, just consolidated, Unitarianism, Universalism, 1961. We are poised, ready, excited, right? I mean, that's where we are. We're ready to lead the country in liberating love for and with people of color. Well, maybe not so much. As I have here a couple excerpts from a religious education handout titled The Empowerment Controversy. Now I'm going to go back and forth between quoting and paraphrasing because it gets long. Quotes. The involvement of Unitarian Universalist clergy and lay people in this series of civil rights marches in and between Selma and Montgomery, Alabama in 1965 is often regarded as a high point in Unitarian Universalist social justice efforts. During this time, 3 people were killed by white supremacists. Jimmy Lee Jackson, a young African American, was shot defending his family from the Alabama State Police. The 2 others, Viola Liuzzo and the Reverend James Reeb, were both white Unitarian Universalists who were participating in the marches after Jackson's death. Reeb's assassination is credited by many with drawing national attention to the struggle for voting rights and promoting the passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. President Lyndon Johnson sent yellow roses to Reeb's hospital room, and Martin Luther King Jr. preached Reeb's eulogy. King's eulogy summed up the vision of the integrationist arm of the civil rights movement. He was a witness to the truth that men of different races might live, eat, and work together as brothers. This vision was tested over the next decade within the Unitarian Universalist Association in what has become known as the Empowerment Controversy. Now, in 1967, there was an emergency conference on the Unitarian Universalist side responding to the rising violent protests and riots which were happening across the United States. I mean, this is classic Unitarian Universalism. It's like, oh, there are riots and there's racial violence. Let's have an emergency conference. Right? I mean, like, let's get together and talk, which I get. You have to start with talking. Now, shortly after starting this conference, a majority of black attendees withdrew to form the Black Unitarian Universalist Caucus. Right away, this movement was criticized, and you might see parallels to the current times and what happens sometimes, because people were saying this new group is one of separation and reverse racism. The Black UU Caucus demanded that the larger conference adopt a series of proposals calling for African American representation on the Board of Trustees, on the Leadership Committee, subsidies for black ministers, and they also called for creation of a Black Affairs Council with UUA support of $250,000 for 4 years. That's $1 million. These proposals were all rejected, except for the creation of a council with no promise of funding. So there's some bureaucracy, there's some back and forth, there's trying to do racial justice. Now the caucus, the Black UU Caucus chairperson, charged that the board's refusal to fund this new Black Affairs Council, and the refusal to allow this council to control funding directly reflected, quote, a traditional racist and paternalistic approach to black problems. Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated in 1968, right before the UUA General Assembly. This is our national gathering of Unitarians and Universalists. Of course, there was more of a push to fund this Black Affairs Council. A general vote passed a motion to fund the organization. Now the quotes swing to the positive, with one noting that this support gave the nation its first example of the denominations making a significant reparation response to the conditions of racism in America. Sadly, though, this was not the case in the long run. The UUA had financial problems, and the board, not openly, tried to alter the funding obligations to the Black Affairs Council. And at 1969 GA in Boston, things came to a head. And if you've been to GA, if you've heard about GA, it's a huge gathering of Unitarian Universalists. So there's business, there's bureaucracy, there's wanting to do the right thing, and all these things mingling together. This is 1969. The official agenda placed the vote for the funding near the very end of the meeting. Members and supporters of the Black Action Council felt that this was not keeping an urgency of the issue and moved that the agenda be changed, be placed at the beginning of the agenda. The vote to alter the agenda received a simple majority, but not the two-thirds majority required for an agenda change. In response, the chairperson declared, unless the assembly deals with these basic problems now and not next Wednesday, the microphones will be possessed and the business of this house will come to halt. The floor microphones were seized by supporters and the business session was forced to end with nothing resolved. The next day, a motion was made to reconsider the order of the agenda. When the motion lost, Black Unitarian Universalist Caucus members walked out, and after talking with leaders of that council, the Reverend Jack Mendelson addressed the assembly stating, our black delegates of BAC have now left the room. They have left the assembly and they have left our movement because life and time are short. The assembly is returning to business as usual and to the position of black people at the back of the bus. Mendelson invited those who shared his feelings to join him down the street at the Arlington Church congregation where he was minister. Now, a few months later, the story goes on, the UUA board, faced with the ongoing fiscal crisis and their own legal responsibility for the financial well-being of the institution, these are words we can hear. Okay, yeah, there's a financial crisis. We need to think about the financial well-being of the institution, voted to reduce the grant to the Black Actions Council from $250,000 to $200,000 and spread the $1 million over 5 years instead of 4. The BAC members decided to disaffiliate from the UUA, attempted to raise money for their programs directly through their own fundraising. And despite their initial fundraising being successful, the BAC, offset by internal strife over differences in strategy, direction, and loyalties, faded from the Unitarian Universalist scene, and many of its members left Unitarian Universalism altogether. And not until 1979 did the UUA begin to explore what happened and why, so that the association could again begin to move forward on the issue of racial justice. Now, I feel like I can just imagine this happening. A big business meeting, trying to get something done, and bureaucracy getting in the way. If anyone followed the Article 2 conversation and vote, you might have seen this. There was a recent discussion, voting, infighting about Article 2 of the bylaws. Emotions, hope, betrayal, confusion, all mixed up with polity and business meetings, right? This was a few years ago. Our national faith leaders charged a committee, I see an error right there. They said, committee, reimagine our defining values, create something inspirational, meaningful, grounded in liberation and justice. Okay, right off the bat, there's going to be some difficulty there. Now, this group took on the task and spent years trying to listen, respond to, incorporate everything they heard, the myriad which is Unitarian Universalism, from fellowships like this, meeting in a rented space, to mainline Church of 600 with their own. So how do you incorporate all of that reality into one paragraph of language? And when the final language was presented, some people were overjoyed. Others deeply offended, and a large group sort of unaware or uncaring. Nationally, there were discussions, there were debates, forums, feedback sessions, and eventually votes. The process was painful, and it did not, I'll be serious, the process did not always align with our values. So I can only imagine what 1969 felt like, with so many people of color feeling unheard, betrayed enough to walk out, to leave. Now, the point is that our country, the point is that our faith, right, neither institution is perfect. That shouldn't be a surprise. Institutions are not perfect. And we may want to put a positive spin, look at that, or ignore our past mistakes. But only recently are we beginning, as a faith community, to seek out the voices of those people who have historically not been included. Like the victors in our case, in Unitarian Universalism, the victors were those white people who stayed at the meeting. Those white people who were in leadership, who held power over the budget, and so they wrote our history. More recently, Unitarian Universalism is looking at our past with both veneration and critique to see where we made mistakes, where we might do what we might do moving into the future. And one very powerful voice in this re-examination of Unitarian Universalism is the Reverend Mark Morrison Reed. He continues to be a vocal truth teller, where for too long we've been and remained silent. His many books examine Unitarian Universalist history, especially with regards to people of color. And it's difficult to important to hear, but Reverend Morrison Reed has this to say about the empowerment controversy. He says, it's time to honor the passion, the fervor, the commitment, the principle of all who were involved, and to thank them for caring so deeply. Portraying the empowerment controversy as institutional failure is short-sighted and misleading. The UUA stumbled, and it had to. It also set the scene for women, lesbian and gay people, the disabled, Hispanics, and other marginalized groups in the UUA to speak out, claim their space, and make demands. These identity groups also experienced resistance, but the outcry was neither as prolonged nor as intense. Who today would challenge an oppressed group's right to gather together to explore its identity, formulate a strategy, and take a stance? Never again since 1969 has the UUA Board of Trustees, Nominating Committee, or Commission on Appraisal been without significant African American representation. Never again would we produce a hymnal or religious education materials without reference to the African American experience. The events set in motion by the Black Rebellion traumatized but also transformed some and educated us all. As Ben Scott said, the tragedy would have been if successive generations had had to continue the struggle the way they did. Unitarian Universalists never stopped trying. Reticently, clumsily, episodically, UUs continue to lurch along. Euro-Americans have come to see that it is their own racism and cultural illiteracy that they are called to address. This is what happens. This is always what needs to happen. But reparation, the giving of $1 million to black concerns, however noble, was not meant to address that. In fact, money's power to assuage guilt may have delayed this white awakening as much as the ensuing trepidation did. Jean Ott aptly called these events the white controversy over black empowerment. In a denomination that was 99% white, what else could it be? It happened because of the bigotry and mistakes of earlier generations, of religious liberals, because society was forcing change upon religious liberals, and change is difficult. because middle-class black UUs needed to redirect their priorities, and this meant for some leaving. These were all good people torn by competing loyalties and conflicting values, some of which ran counter to their deepest traditions of polity and individualism. It happened because of institutional immaturity, fear, and hubris. It happened because it had to happen. Now, this has been much more history than I first intended. I didn't think, oh, I'm going to come and I'm going to talk history. But it's with a point, because only when we look at the past, only when we listen deeply with reverence, with critique, can we have a better idea of what future we want to create, where we need to go, what's necessary for a better future. And I could go on and on with this topic, reviewing histories that have been literatively or figuratively whitewashed by those who are in power. Instead, I want to give everyone here a challenge. I want to give you a challenge. Look at your own families. Look at your own lives, too. What in your family lives, what in your past are you not proud of? Where in my past am I not proud? Where might I feel a little bit of shame? Did my ancestors own slaves? Have my relations benefited from others' disadvantages? What institutional or societal privileges got me where I am today and may have put others at a disadvantage? Take these questions for yourself and take these questions as they are, not for blame, but as an opportunity for introspection, for difficult beginnings to self-knowledge. Because when we see where our families fall short, when we see where we have fallen short, the question for me is always, what next? What now? So what? With difficult knowledge, what do we do? Columbus helped to bring European people and culture to the American continents. We can laud, we can thank him for that. We can also see the pain, death, destruction which he brought. And we can learn about what a sense of divine given power and privilege can do. Right? We should not ignore his legacy, just as we need to make concerted efforts to rise up and see the truths and histories of those who are on the other side of his, quote, exploration. The celebration of Indigenous people pushes our country to recognize the past failures while also heightening understanding and celebration of formerly forgotten cultures. In our faith community, we recognize the pain and the harm which was caused by a mainly white movement trying to do good in the world. Not only do we recognize the pain, but we try to assuage it, to respond to it, and possibly to heal the brokenness and pain which was caused. Institutionally, the UUA board just recently pledged over $5 million to the Black Lives of UU as one small effort in restitution. Now, money is not the only way, nor the best way. And the ongoing pain is one reason why, if you're in National Unitarian Universalist communities, you may experience concerted efforts to decentralize white voices, where they have a way of talking in meetings where people of color go first. And this is why you may see when people stand up to talk, they name their privilege, they name their identities, because we're working in new and challenging ways with all of this back pain. Now, I end by recognizing this picture, which has been behind me, and you may all be thinking, like, why did he ask for, is this an error? No, I asked for them, just put that up there the entire time. And I end by recognizing this picture. Does anyone know what this is? Looks like a golden goose, a duck. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a duck, and there's some gold and an egg. Close. It's called the Sankofa bird. Now, this is a portrayal of the Sankofa bird. Sankofa is a symbol from Ghana, which speaks to learning from and listening from our past. The bird is depicted with its feet facing forward this way, and its head facing backward, right? And it's often depicted picking up an egg, picking up something. What it's doing is to move forward into the future, to walk forward, but keeping an eye on the past, seeing what's there, and also taking what's valuable from the past. That's what that egg is. what lessons were learned even, what wisdom gained, so that we can walk forward into the past, revering, critiquing, learning from our history. The knowledge of our past must never be forgotten. We can take that wisdom both from the amazing and the terrible. Right? That's our charge. That's our charge. It's never an easy one. This is not an easy charge. To look to the past with reverence. To look to the past with humility, with critique. And then to create a future informed by that past. Because this is what we need to do, is to be the Sankofa. So use your wisdom, use your knowledge, your looking backwards to help heal the world, to help heal your communities, and to help heal yourselves. Amen and amen.
It's only one word. Wow. Thank you, Reverend Andrew, for taking us on that journey and leaving us with that challenge. I think I'm glad we record these sessions. Mike, I hope this one goes up early because it's worth a revisit. So thank you again. Now's the time in our service when we pause to listen to the joys and sorrows of this community. If you have something to share, I invite you forward to speak at this microphone, and we listen with open hearts.
I think many of you know that Gil and I are from the Midwest, wherever that is to some of you. But we had a great time, even though we missed our church service last week. We went to Elyria, Ohio, west of Cleveland. We went to Kalamazoo, Michigan, and Jackson and Parma, Michigan, and Lansing, Michigan, all of which are about halfway-ish between Detroit and Chicago. We went to Columbus, Ohio. All of these places we saw family and friends and had a great time. But for those of you that have never been to any of those towns, I urge you to visit and see other people and cultures and whatnot. But we were sorry to miss last Sunday. And we also missed another very important day, which was Laura Weinstein's 102nd birthday. And we're so pleased and proud to have you here with us today.
So we got a ditto there. We'll start with Liz and then Bill.
Good morning. I'm Elizabeth. I just have a brief, maybe, I'm not sure it's a sorrow, it's just a major frustration. When I walked out to my car this morning to come here, I noticed one of my political signs had been completely crumbled up and thrown to the curb, and the metal frame was all bent, and that was crumbled up too. And my first reaction was, I just couldn't believe it. Like somebody stepped up onto my lawn in the middle of the night and did that. And it's basically an infringement on my freedom of expression. It's just like, so I want to acknowledge that this kind of behavior goes in all directions, from any political party to another political thing. So it's not one group against another and that's it. But I just feel extremely dismayed, and when I get home today, I'm going to redo everything and just keep putting up signs. What else can you do? I do have a couple other political signs, let's say, representing or supporting minor characters that are like, you know, local or regional, and those signs were untouched, but a key sign was totally destroyed. I do have backups, so that's it. Let's just hope that we get to the end of November and everything is okay. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Bill Stroop. My wife Nancy is with others working hard with the kids on our traditional craft day. But we wanted to let you know that our granddaughter, Zaya Morris, who attended this fellowship for some time in our RE program, she is getting married next Friday in San Clemente, California. And Nancy and I will be going there, so we will miss next Sunday, but we'll be back and hopefully have some good memories.
Ann?
Good morning, I'm Ann. Bill just jogged my memory. I can't believe I forgot this, but my youngest daughter, Kara, and my 3 children grew up here, got engaged this weekend and is marrying her longtime high school sweetheart. They've been together almost 7 years now. So not a big surprise, but a very joyful one for us.
Anyone else? Well, I'll just share the joy since we're talking about grandchildren. Mike and I had a video from our granddaughter receiving the first of what we hope to be many academic awards at the kindergarten level right now, but we'll get there. So anyone else? Well, for all the joys out there, spoken and unspoken, feel our celebration with you, and for any sorrows, feel also our compassion and concern. So let us pause and sing Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
So as our service comes towards its conclusion, please join me in a responsive reading. Words will be up there on the screen. If you're following along at home over Zoom and you have a hymnal, it's responsive reading number 652, The Great End in Religious Instruction, and this was a responsive reading suggested by our guest speaker. I'll start off and you can join me in the italicized text. The great end in religious instruction is not to stamp our minds upon the young, but to stir up their own, not to make them see with our eyes, but to look inquiringly and steadily with their own, not to give them a definite amount of knowledge, but to inspire a fervent love of truth, not to form an outward regularity, but to touch inward springs, not to bind them with ineradicable prejudices to our particular sect or peculiar notions, but to prepare them for impartial, conscientious judging of whatever subjects may be offered to their direction, not to burden the memory, but to quicken and strengthen the power of thought, not to impose religion upon them in the form of arbitrary rules, but to awaken the conscience, the moral discernment. In a word, the great end is to awaken the soul, to excite and cherish spiritual life. This is brought to us by William Ellery Channing. And now Avi will lead us in our closing song, and it's been a bit of a time, so let's get the blood moving, and if you're able and willing, please rise.
Please join me in singing hymn number 121, We'll Build a Land. You can follow along with the words there on the screen. We'll sing all 4 verses together. We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come build a land where siblings in spirit, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll build a land where we bring the good tidings to all the afflicted and all those who mourn, and we'll give them garlands instead of ashes. Oh, we'll build a prom where peace is born. Come build a land where siblings in spirit, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. We'll be a land building up ancient cities, raising up devastations from old, restoring ruins of generations. Oh, we'll build a land of people so bold. Come build a land where siblings in spirit, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come build a land where the mantles of praises resound from spirits once faint and once weak, where like oaks of righteousness stand her people. Oh, come build a land, my people, we seek. Come build a land where siblings in spirit, anointed by God, may then create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream.
As we extinguish the chalice, we offer you these words. May we open our hearts and minds to one another and the world. May we let ourselves be changed by the stories around us. May we deeply listen and be deeply listened to, and be held in silence and love, and so may it always be. Our service is concluded. For those of you on Zoom, thank you for joining us today. We hope to see you again next week. Regarding next week, it's clock change time. This is the time 2 times a year we get to travel through time. So remember, it's fall back. You won't want to miss us. So please make sure if your smart clocks or smartphones aren't working for you, that you've got the manual backup plan. In the meantime, let's just all thank Reverend Andrew Weber for his excellent sermon today. And I remind you that we have a chili gathering going out there. So for everybody, it's more than coffee today. I hope to see you in the cafeteria. And just go now in peace.